Good morning. Welcome to In the Garden Facebook Live program brought to you by the Montgomery County Master Gardener Program. I am Maureen Thomas, your moderator and a Montgomery County Master Gardener 2022 intern. The gardening experts joining us for today are Steve Dubik, the Montgomery County Master Gardeners Coordinator for the University of Maryland Extension, where you can learn more information about becoming a Master Gardener and joining next year's intern class. The second guest we have on today is Christina Wright, a Montgomery County Master Gardener, a mother of 5, which is something to be very proud of, and a professional landscaper. I'd like to remind you that some of the services that the Montgomery County Master Gardeners provide to our county include our speakers group, demonstration gardens, youth gardening programs, Eat It, Grow It, therapeutic horticulture, and as well as our monthly special events. Always, for more information, please check the Montgomery County Master Gardener website for details. We will be sharing some information about a few of these special events today at the end of our program. We have a regular monthly Ask a Master Gardener available to you both in person and via this program on Facebook and at the Ballard. Ask a Master Gardener is your chance to bring questions about your own specific garden to Montgomery County Master Gardener. Before we begin today's program, we'd like you to know that you're welcome to submit a question during this live broadcast, and we are saving time at the end of our program today to answer any questions received. Simply go to our Facebook link and submit your question using the comment section. Otherwise, please consider sending your questions for future programs by email to inthegardenswithmcmg@gmail.com. Or you may call 301-590-2842 and leave a voicemail including email address. Please remember to include your email so that we may follow up, and include as much information as possible and photographs that help the Master Gardeners understand the situation. We have a YouTube channel. You're welcome to see the programs that have already been produced on the YouTube channel that discuss a variety of topics related to gardening in Montgomery County. With that, I'd like to start today's program by giving our first question to Steve Dubik. It's about brown patches on the lawn. It's a question submitted by Geoff Wong from Durwood, Maryland. We have 3 photos, and the question is, I have some brown patches of no growth in my lawn. I tried to provide some pictures to let you see some of the spots. It's in some spots and not the whole yard. Do you think that I would benefit from grub treatment? Thanks, Geoff.
Okay. Thanks, Maureen. It could be grubs. We need to take a closer look at. If it is grubs, this is what you should see. At this time of the year, they're going to be finishing up very shortly feeding. So you still may see them near the surface of the soil. They have one generation a year. Their generation is going to be ending up as far as what they do in the ground as a larva, as a grub. And they would be feeding near the surface of the soil, and you would get patches. But from the pictures that I looked at, I saw it seemed to be tracking a little bit more, at least from what I can tell, in a little bit more of a lower lying area. And it looked more of like a natural flow of the water through the yard. I think it may be a plant disease, but going back, you want to look to see if it's grubs. Try to lift it up, see if you see any evidence of the grubs still there. You should have seen, or could have seen, some activity of some animals feeding on the grubs, whether it's birds, often early in the morning, pecking into the area where the grubs are, and they'll leave like little holes when they're blackbird, starlings, things like that. Sometimes you can get other animals in there like skunks and raccoons going after the grubs. If it is grubs, their damage is pretty much finished for this year. So if you did anything now, it's not even late for revenge. So they're going to go to a pupal stage, and then they're going to become an adult, and then they're going to go fly away and going to lay eggs elsewhere. So it's really too late for that. There is a product called Milky Spore. Has really limited effects, unfortunately. It only works on Japanese beetle grubs. It takes time. And the quality of the product that's being produced and how the efficacy of it, it's not as great as we used to think. So it's not that it's not bad. It's just it may not give you the desired results that you expect. More likely, if you do get results controlling it, it's from other things, natural predators and things coming in there over time. So again, looking at, I think it may be more of a lawn disease. And if it is, what you need to do is we need to take a much closer look at the turf, and you want to look right near the edge of the diseased turf. Look at the grass blades. Look for lesion spots, things like that. Right there right as the lawn transitions from dead to green. If you do find something like that, you might see some symptoms there, might be able to ID it. Looking at the symptoms and knowing the type of turf grass, that'll help you a great deal to figure out what type of lawn disease it is. And the thing with lawn diseases is that the time you figure out what it is, have the time to maybe go get a fungicide, go apply it. The weather conditions have changed. And the other real big issue here in Montgomery County is we're no longer allowed to use synthetic types of pesticides to use on our lawn. So we're really limited that. So if it is a lawn disease, it's really right now, it's more prevention. And so things like what we'll do is try to rake out the areas where the turf has died and overseed it. Probably try to get a couple of different varieties of turfgrass seed in there, hoping that some of them are going to be more resistant to this disease in the future. My guess is that it's bluegrass, Kentucky bluegrass, tracking down the center of the lawn. And I would probably go with varieties of tall fescue. And each time, I would switch it up each time. So I think genetic diversity is a good thing in your lawn. So maybe one variety is resistant to one of the diseases, brown patch, another variety is resistant to a dollar spot or what have you. That's the way to go. So sorry for the long answer there.
Oh, that was great.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Okay.
So that gives a variety of answers to a very tough challenge.
Yeah.
Out in the lawn. The next question was submitted by Mo, and it is a question about a little critter that people find in their garden. Christina, would you like to take this question?
Sure. These are actually
Well, I'll read it. Let me read the question real quick just so that our listeners can hear it. Every spring when I move my pots, which live in the backyard, I find these critters resting under them. They are about 10 centimeters long and wiggle around a lot. She's very descriptive here. They do not have any paws or limbs. I go away for a few minutes after exposing them because I get scared, and when I return, they will be gone. Are these snakes or something else? I've attached 2 photos for ID. Thanks, Christina.
Yeah, so these are actually really common. They're cute little garden salamanders that thrive in the soils here because they're super moist. They do no harm. They're actually really good to have in your garden. And they like cool, moist places. So that's why you find them often underneath pots or, other areas, like underneath rocks and things like that. But they will not hurt anybody. They do look like snakes at first because of their shiny, slimy looking skin. And they're definitely not that. But yeah, they're very common in the garden. I don't know, Steve, if you have anything else to input about them.
No, they're exciting to see. They're not probably as numerous as they once were, and so I think it just sort of shows you got a healthy ecosystem there to see those little critters around.
Yes. That's how I feel. If you find them, it's a healthy garden.
Yeah, just like when you find worms in your garden, definitely.
And toads and all of the, yep. Okay. So the next question we have is about Juniper, was submitted by Deb. I'm going to start this one, but feel free to jump in, Christina and Steve, after I do. We have a couple of photos here. The question is, what is wrong with my juniper? These 2 things were wrapped around the branch of the juniper tree. Will they kill the tree? Question mark. So what is wrapped around the tree is a cedar apple rust gall. And I'm not really sure. It looks pretty big, so it's been there for a while. I don't know if it's going to kill the tree. I guess it's going to take a while. But what are your thoughts? Another couple of years on that tree, Steve, or what do you think?
Oh, these galls that we get on the it could be an eastern red cedar, which is actually juniper. It's our native juniper. Or it could be another type of juniper, Chinese juniper. We don't know. We really see the galls. And so the galls came from a fungus, and it's called a rust. And it's called rust fungus because the spores that it releases are, they're orangey and colored like rust.
Apple rust, yeah.
Yeah. And so they don't pose much threat to the juniper or the eastern red cedar. Sometimes they're numerous, and sometimes when in early May, often you get some cool, cloudy days, they excrete this kind of gelatinous, jelly-like structures that look like little horns or like little legs, and they kind of look kind of gross and neat, and then they dry away. But other than that, they don't cause a lot of damage there. The damage they can cause is to the other host. So it has two hosts. One is on a juniper. The other is going to be on an apple tree or a crab apple or something close related to that. And there they can cause some damage to the foliage and the stems and discolor the fruit. So that's the situation. So on the juniper, we just live with it. But if you have it on an apple tree, that's something different. So we would try to get around that by growing resistant varieties of apples. And if you do grow apples, although these spores can be spread huge distances, we probably don't want to put an eastern red cedar and an apple tree right beside each other. You're just asking for trouble. Mm-hmm. So other than that, yeah.
Right. So that probably is the most important takeaway. Make sure you don't try to plant apple trees near they already have the cedar. We don't want to start a new garden with apple trees, or you're going to continue the problem. It looks like they take approximately 18, their life cycle about 2 years, Steve, to 18 months.
Well, it takes a while to form those galls, yeah. And one of the things is that if you want to get an apple tree, this is where you might want to look at the University of Maryland Extension website and look for varieties, because they're going to list fruit trees that are recommended for our area. And since this is a common disease, that's where you really want to get it. So that's going to save you a lot of time and labor. The apple you might enjoy at the grocery store, and you try to grow that variety, might be mighty good tasting, but it may not do as well here because it may be very susceptible to this disease.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you very much. The next question is clover in the lawn. And Steve, would you like to take this one?
All right, sure.
The question is, hi, it was sent by Jim. And the question is, hi, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how to control clover in the Gaithersburg area.
Okay, so here's the key thing. It's in a lawn. And first, I gotta take a step back. And some people like clover in their lawn. In fact, back in the 50s and 60s, the University of Maryland Extension, I remember seeing some of these really old fact sheets in our office. They promoted clover in your lawn.
Yes, people were paying to put clover in their lawn.
And I know in Montgomery County Department of Environment Protection are promoting clover called micro clover in your lawn. It's just a real smaller looking little plant. Now it's not everybody's cup of tea, and they do attract some bees, and if you have little ones and they step on it, that's not a fun thing. But maybe in some areas, maybe just before we get into control it, maybe you just might want to let it go, or maybe you let it go in the backyard, maybe just manage it in the front yard or something like that. But the issue here is that again in Montgomery County, you're limited what you can use in your lawn to control weeds. You can go to the Montgomery County Department of Environment Protection website. The weed control options fall into two groups. They're pre-emergence, and that's usually for annuals and things like that. But we've got an existing weed in the lawn. The issue is there are products out there we can use in our lawn that are pretty good, and that are approved by on that list of Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection has, but they're non-selective. So if you got a patch of clover and you spray it, it'll kill the clover, or at least kill it off to the top. It may come back. We might have to do it again. But if there's some turf grass in there too, it's going to kill that. So there are a couple selective items in there. One of them is kind of an iron chelated product. I'm not sure how well it works on clover. To be honest, I haven't used it. I use it on some broadleaves, and it's, like dandelions and plantain. It does a pretty good job. So there's one product out there, and you can find that on the. It's maybe a little expensive, but if you've got a small yard, you can probably work it there. But so you could go. The other approach is if you mow it a little higher, and like 3.5 inches, and you mow properly, and then you fertilize, following the state guidelines. That will help your lawn a little bit in the long run. It's just a little bit. It's a little increment here. It's not going to get rid of your clover, but if you mow your lawn real low, you don't fertilize it, it's probably going to favor the clover a little bit more, because clover has one trick up its sleeve. It fixes atmospheric nitrogen, and it uses that to help grow. So turf grasses don't. So in soils that are, let's say, a little bit more nutrient poor, the clover is going to have that little edge, but then also that clover is giving some of that nitrogen back to the soil and to other plants around there too. So if you have it intermixed in a lawn, kind of bluegrass clover lawn like they used to pitch long ago, it's not a bad deal. So anyway, it's I don't know if I've given you the answer you wanted, but maybe tolerance is is way to go. But I get if you got really big patches of clover, maybe you hit it with a non-selective spot treat that and overseed with some turf grass. Probably now is not probably the best time of the year to do it. I'd wait it out at this point, wait till the fall.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
We have another quick question around Creeping Charlie that I think would be, if you don't mind taking that one.
Sure.
Submitted by Kathy. Creeping Charlie from the neighboring condo flower beds is overgrowing my hosta bed. How can I control it? That similar theme of controlling.
Yeah. So I know Christina knows about probably Creeping Charlie, being a landscaper. This is a weed. This weed spreads really fast. It's got these stolons and it's in the shade, and when you pull it up, it has a certain smell to it. It has kind of a musky kind of smell to it. Now in this situation, it's in a landscape bed. So the laws in Montgomery County pertain to lawns. So there are some herbicides you can use in a landscape bed, but a lot of these, same thing, they're non-selective. So you got to watch it. So if you've got a great big patch of it, yeah, you could probably put your Roundup or your, other products on there. But there's some more nice products that are approved by the Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection. Some organic, or some what's called OMRI, which essentially means it's OMRI, and it just really means it's initials for a group that approves safe pesticides. And if you see that little label, it says OMRI on it. It's going to be okay to use in a lawn, and you can use probably that same product read label in a landscape bed. But it's easy to pull up, but we usually don't get all the pieces. It's going to come back, and so if you can, pull it up, but you're going to have to come back a few times. So I don't know if Christina wants to add anything or has issues with it. It loves the shade. Loves the shade.
Yeah, another thing to consider too is the quality of soil. So weeds like to grow in more compact type soils. Another thing you could also do is plant shade plants like hostas or Helleborus or astilbe, things that really take up space that will outcompete the weeds. I always recommend that to my clients if they're really dealing with an issue like that. And also applying, a light layer of mulch, that'll help as well. If you're dealing with a lot of weed issues, you could always get your soil tested to make sure that, the soil isn't really the right type of condition for the weeds to grow in. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of mediate it without having to go the chemical route.
I agree, Christina. That's a great idea. Great addition.
Yeah.
And I think also possibly looking at putting up a barrier. The comment is it's overgrowing from a nearby condo bed. So if they're directly next to each other, then maybe if you can put up some sort of a little barrier, maybe a 6-inch barrier or one of the ones you push down into the ground that doesn't allow the migration quite as easily, or some stones, something like that to delineate one bed from the other.
Yeah, and if the person who submitted the question decides to go that route, I always recommend putting some landscaping fabric down before the rock, because that'll really help smother out and kind of, this sounds a little harsh, suffocate the weeds or anything. Yeah, and there's actually different types of landscaping fabric, some that are thicker than others that you can look online for. I'm pretty sure the extension office might have more information about that as well. But yeah, there's a lot of different options there to take care of it. And ideally, it'd be best to go the organic route rather than choosing chemical. Just trying to promote that, but.
Well, Christina, this is a perfect entree into the next question, which is a question submitted by Deborah F. And I was hoping you would take this question. It's about landscaping a wooded yard. And the question is, I want to landscape a large wooded yard to make it more interesting. How would you suggest I start, and what should I plant?
Yeah, this question gets me really excited. This is one of my passions, is plants in the landscape, especially woodland type of naturalistic. Before recommending anything, I would of course need a little bit more information as far as how much sun do you get, what other plants do you have growing there. But if it's full shade, you can get away with planting hostas and still be helleborus. There's actually a boatload of native plants that thrive in shade. I like Dicentra, which is bleeding heart, and coral bells. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank here because
they can check the extension website for that as well. There are a number of lists of plants available for sun and shade that they can link to through the University of Maryland Extension website.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Yeah, the extension website does have a lot of great information as far as which native plants. And I would definitely highly recommend native. I know, we go to the nurseries and we get all excited, seeing all the different things. But sometimes, they're not a good mix, especially if you're planting in a woodland garden. Like, for example, if you get the wrong ground cover, it's going to completely take over. You're going to have some issues there. But another thing you could do as well is you could honestly incorporate some rocks if you wanted to do that. So there's a lot of different options.
And maybe include some shrubs and some trees like red bud.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
That really adds some focal points and some complexity to your plan for your garden.
Yeah. But once again, I think it's helpful to get a little bit more information as far as, how deep into the woods, if it's just along the woodland border or if it's, a few feet in. All of that is really important to know as well. But just for starters, yeah, definitely start with the extension office and go from there.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Christina. And the next question is on the Asian pear tree. Steve, would you like to take this question? It was submitted by Dave. Okay, thanks. Yeah. The question is, one of the top branches on my Asian pear tree broke off. It had small pears and healthy leaves on it. What's wrong with the tree? Is there anything I can do to help it?
Okay, yeah. So I think the pictures here help a lot. So when you look at the stems and these branches, that you can see there's kind of a discolored area. It's kind of shrunken and it's delineated from the surrounding tissue, and that looks like a canker. And so some cankers are very obvious and some are not. So cankers are areas often where the disease either enters into the plant or exits, or maybe both. So this looks like it's fire blight, and fire blight it's bacterial disease. And so as bacterial diseases, there's not a lot plants get compared to fungal diseases. The thing with bacterial diseases, they're very easy to spread. And bacterial diseases can be difficult to manage. So one of the ways to try to do this, I don't know what variety of Asian pear, and I probably have to get some help on this too, to see if there's the variety this person has is one that's maybe kind of going back to what we're talking about, the apple trees. Is it more resistant? So Asian pears have become very popular over the years, last several years. But sometimes our harsh winters and our conditions around here been problematic. So you may be going for a number of years and everything's fine. Then the weather conditions are really good for a fire blight and they take hold. So what to do? I would prune out, and it seems like a lot. You would prune out these cankers. So stop them from spreading the plant. If it's the entire plant, then you may want to reevaluate the whole situation, particularly if you have other pears around. You might have to sacrifice this pear so it won't spread the disease to other pears. This is the one case, if you know you're dealing with a bacterial disease, you hear about this a lot, but to be honest, I guess I'm a bad horticulturist at times. I don't disinfect my pruning shears between all my cuts and all my plants. But when I'm dealing with bacterial diseases like fire blight, it may not be quite as active at this time of the year, but still, I would disinfect my pruning shears at least between other plants, if not every other cut. And you can use a variety of things to do that. Rubbing alcohol is probably something you might have handy. Clorox is good, but some things that might surprise people is things like Lysol and things like that. They actually do a pretty good job. So prune out these shoots. They have the cankers on it, and basically we're going to try to promote health and vigor of the plant. Hopefully that'll grow it over time, and we'll see what happens.
Great, thank you, Steve. The next question is about the American elm. It was submitted by Anne from Montgomery County, and the question is, this week I noticed several leaves on my American elm had curled, twisted, and stunted leaves. What could be causing this distortion? Is there anything I should do about it? We do have one picture, and based on that picture, the researchers for our team this week deduced that it is the woolly aphid, and that's related to the Dutch elm disease, which causes wilt and death in all species of elm. It's caused by an invasive fungal pathogen, which is carried by the elm bark beetles. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah, it is. Yes.
And they spread the DD fungus when feeding. So it spreads from tree to tree through the root grafts. Fungicide injections can protect your elm tree, from the infection by bark beetles. If it's caught early, the DED infections can be pruned out and the tree can be protected. So we would recommend pruning. If you can look at the tree and prune out those limbs and get to it quickly, then you could start treating the tree, and it's possible that you could save it. But what are your thoughts, Steve, based on the photo?
Yeah. Well, the photo's a good photo. It shows it pretty good. It's usually this, if it's just the aphid, I hope it's just the aphid and we're not seeing more, throughout the plant, lots of leaves twisting and curling. It could be a pretty good aphid infestation. It could be the signs of maybe you're getting branches failing or flagging from Dutch elm disease. But if it's just these woolly aphids here, probably the tree can manage it if it as long as it doesn't get really excessive. They are very noticeable. They are very I don't know, the word is just what's distracting, let's say. And then people might get like really concerned of. But if you wait and this is a good learning opportunity, you go and you look at curl these leaves, you'll see the aphids. And if you look in there, get a hand lens out, get one of these little kind of digital microscopes, or even your camera, and as used as a magnifier, you'll see not only them, you'll probably see beneficial insects cruising in there. They're going to come. They may be late to the party, but they're going to come. And it's just interesting. Some elms will get hit a little harder each year than others. Not, kind of speculate why that is. But most of the time, we just kind of wait it out. You go through a wave. We see something like this on birch trees, and you just wait it out. About the second half of the growing season, there you go. was there a problem? And but anyway, they if you look in there, it's quite a show. There's quite a crew in there, and they're very active, feeding, and lots of going on there. It's kind of, don't watch it before you go to bed. It's kind of give you a nightmare. But it's there's a lot going on there. So anyway, but yeah.
The good news is for Anne and the American elm that there is hope, and got some options, and stay tuned and pay attention. And
yeah, I think it'll work itself out.
Great. Okay, this next question I'd love to ask Christina. It's about the African violet, and it was submitted by a listener named Rose in Montgomery County. And her question is, what is wrong with my African violet? Can it be saved? And we have 2 photos, Christina.
Yeah, so I'm honestly thinking that this violet has been slightly overwatered. But that's okay. It happens. I've overwatered many houseplants before and drowned them. It's okay. So I would honestly recommend seeing if there's a way to possibly transplant into another pot of more drier soil and kind of start over, and then see what happens. That could, Steve, do you have anything else to input?
No, other than I saw when I looked in the center of the plant, it looks like, repotting and cleaning it out, and maybe if it's overwatered, avoid overwater. I think it's going to recoup, but you kind of see the deep down low, things are looking better.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I know that African violets, they don't really need a whole lot of watering either.
Yeah, they're very particular. You're right about the amount of water.
Very particular. Yes, absolutely.
So you want to water them from below, have the plant in a saucer, and make sure the water is kind of room temperature when you do it.
And not very frequently.
No.
So the verdict here is that it sounds like it can be saved. So that's good news.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to the next question, which is about lavender. And Steve, this is a question for you. My lavender has lots of branches turning gray. Is it diseased? What should I do to improve the health?
Okay, so yeah, this is a real common problem. I'm having on my lavender that I'm growing up at the college, Montgomery College. We've got several different locations where it's really on a slope. It's doing a lot better. I have some on little raised berms and mounds and areas which I thought the soil was relatively well drained. But I think because lavender and plants like lavender and rosemary and others, they're from an area climate, in the Mediterranean climate, where it's soils are very well drained. pH is relatively high. Our growing conditions here aren't optimal for it. The last several years, we've had some really wet springs, and then it gets pretty dry. That's kind of our new norm. And so the soils may, or during the winter, the soils stay too wet, too saturated for too long, and we get fungal diseases. I think root rot, and there's some other things. So probably the best thing in the future in general, and I'm learning this too, is to really make sure your soil's really well drained, full sun, good air circulation. Just bring it on, keep away. You don't have to fertilize it a lot. Don't have to mend the soil a lot. Try to keep the pH up higher. Use some of these newer varieties like Phenomenal. And even I've used that. They look great. Even I've had issues with that too. So maybe plant it on a berm a little higher. Don't pack lots of mulch underneath of it. So yeah, it kind of thrives a little bit more in neglect. Keep it high and on the dry side. Keep it well drained. If you have a site where it's gotten really bad, it's probably not a good idea to plant another one there unless you change the site conditions. Because if you don't change the site conditions, it's going to happen again.
Right.
So yeah.
Good to test sometimes. First with one plant and then add some kind of a layered approach to your gardening. Okay, thank you, Steve. The next question, Christina, if you could take this one. It's about a red oak. It was submitted by Cammie. There's 4 photos, and the question is, why is my oak tree not leafing out? Will fertilizer help the tree? Is it dying?
Yeah, so there's probably a couple different things that may be going on with this tree. We would definitely need a little bit more information in regard, to other other things. Steve and I were discussing a couple different options that could be going on with it. Steve, do you want to add in anything?
Yeah, when you see this is kind of really dramatic. You have this tree, which looks like maybe it's about a year or so ago was doing really good. What took it out? We'd probably have to get some more information on it. Try to a little more investigative work here. But I was talking with Christina. We've been noticing. I've noticed, at least in my neighborhood, a lot of oaks dying. Usually they're more white oaks. A lot of this is getting attributed to climate change.
Yeah.
And so what's happened to this individual red oak here that caused it to die, we're not quite sure, but you might want to run through the kind of list of things like you looking for exit holes from maybe borers, see if there's any kind of, and I didn't see from the photo, right around the soil line, evidence of mushrooms or rot or decay. A girdling rope or wire. Sometimes you look at one side of the tree, you don't see something. You look around the backside, and you see a big, huge wound or something. But it's pretty dramatic, and it's kind of like one of the little bit. I'm not sure. This is kind of surprising, but it does happen. So the other thing you probably want to do, and I didn't see it there. Look at the lawn. Look at the other plants around. Are they affected, or is just the tree affected? Because sometimes it might be something else going on. Something, we sometimes have some unusual things where some people they put a chemical, or poured something or something around there, but it's a little bit of a mystery here. I was talking with this Christina. We're not quite sure.
Yeah, and there's actually a really good reference on the extension site as far as just giving you different options as far as like oak diseases. And I would definitely reference that just to kind of get an idea, but without doing a little bit more investigating, it's really hard to pinpoint exactly what could be the problem. There, as Steve mentioned, there's so many different things that could be going on. And actually, I live in an area of oaks, and the ones that are in here have also been slowly dying. So it's interesting to see that change.
Or maybe this is a case where you might want to cut a piece of cut some leaves or a branch off maybe and bring it into the in-person Montgomery County Master Gardener opportunities and show it to them.
Yeah, that would actually be a really good idea, because sometimes, if it's like a pest happening or something, they're so tiny, so microscopic that sometimes you need a little bit more investigating going on to really pinpoint. And leaves do tell a lot. Same thing with twigs and bark. They do tell a lot about what could be going on. Yeah, it's just hard to tell, from this photo. Okay. Definitely.
Well, a lot of great information. Thank you, Christina. The next question, we're getting close here. We have just two left, is about blue juniper. It was submitted by Leah and Montgomery County. And Steve, if you could take this question. Apparently we have two photos, and the question is, what is wrong with my blue juniper? Just getting straight to the point. Loaded with orange goo and just gross. I will probably replace it with the sweet May magnolia.
There you go. So yeah, this is this is another rust. It's we had cedar apple rust before, but there's a couple kinds of rust that get onto our junipers. There's two actually. There's a quince rust and there's a hawthorn rust, and there's several rusts out there, and they look pretty similar. And the growing conditions that favor these rusts are similar. So it's not surprising if you see one rust, you'll see another one. So this one doesn't cause a lot of damage to the junipers sometimes, and it is kind of gross. It is like a little orange goo that gets on there. As soon as it gets hotter and drier, it goes away and leaves like a little orange stain on the stem, and that's pretty much it. Medicated on some plants, and I think like on this juniper here showing us, they will cause some twig dieback, and it will cause a lot of twig dieback, and the plant won't look too spiffy. Now, for some people, they'll see there's a little bit of green and blue in it, and they're fine, and maybe they'll prune some of it out, and they're okay with that. Other people, well, this is my front yard. I can't handle this. This is just too much. It's
a main entryway.
Yeah, the main entry. Yeah,
really nice.
Yeah, you're testing your love of plants, and I call a little bit of what I call plant snobbery. It's not good enough for here. Maybe in the backyard, yes, but but that happens. That's just part of what is seen on some of our junipers, and some. I'm sure it's a lot of it's genetics and site and other things, but a lot of it's probably genetic. It's just really bad on that plant, and you're going to be fighting an uphill battle. And so it's probably the thing. If it's really bad, I would take it out. Now, it may be really bad because there's poor air circulation. There's a lot of shade. Maybe there's some things you can do that sanitation, fight it back. But yeah, that's the judgment you got to make. I'm going to put this much love and labor into it, and this is what I'm going to get. It's a tough call, but that's what it is. It's a rust.
Thanks, Steve. Our very last question was submitted to the University of Maryland Extension email, and it was submitted by Karen Angel of Montgomery County. And the question involves, I live in Silver Spring, and we have a low concrete retaining wall between our yard and the driveway. I've noticed hundreds of small red bugs recently that I've identified as concrete mites. Are they a problem other than being a little creepy? Is there a way I can or should get rid of them? Thanks so much. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. I thought I'd give some initial thoughts, and then Christina and Steve would love to have you weigh in. I think that they are confusing the concrete mites with what we actually call clover mites. And often there's, a little bit of weeds growing in the cement steps or the concrete that's migrated from the garden, from the yard, and clover mites just love those little areas to eat the clover and the grasses and the weeds and whatnot, and they kind of nibble and leave little white spots on the clover. So I think what I would suggest to them is, to look a little closer in their lawn, and if they see them there as well, then maybe they're actually clover mites. But I'm sure, Steve, you run into these clover mites all the time, or red mites, and Christina, you as well.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Christina.
Yeah, they can be off-putting, because of their color, and they're a little bit fast-moving.
I will say that they don't crush them because, as you just said, with the rust, they leave a really strong red spot. So if you don't like them, maybe use your leaf blower and blast them off of your walkway. If they get in your house, think about using a vacuum, but definitely don't try to sweep them or press them because they'll leave a stain behind.
So yeah, they're little, as Christina mentioned, they're a little faster, and the warmer it is, the faster they'll move across. And they're one of the ways is the differentiate. They have two legs out front that are really, really much longer than the other legs in proportion, along with their speed and their size. They're kind of big for a mite. Usually tolerate them. They might bite you to check you out or something like that. But generally, they're mostly just a nuisance. And sometimes you see them kind of crawling around your window screen and things like that. But you kind of let them be. But they can be different colors because when they feed on different things, they might change their color a little bit. But usually they're kind of orangey red.
Very good. Okay, thanks, guys. Great teamwork. I think we're done with the questions for this portion of our program. As I mentioned in the beginning, if you have questions throughout this program today, if you submitted them in the chat on our Facebook channel, we can answer them now. So just to remind you, if you want to submit a question during this program or a future program, please go to our live Facebook program and go to the comment section. Or you can send an email to inthegardenwithmcmg@gmail.com or call 301-590-2842 and leave a voicemail with your question, including your email address. Please enter as much detail as possible. Photos are always welcome. As you can see from today's program, they're absolutely critical to being able to help you figure out your gardening problem. So with that, I'd like to reach out to our teammate Bev and find out, Bev, do we have any questions that we need to answer at this time?
No, we don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, then I'd like to move on to the program announcements, just to remind folks about some upcoming other programs. The next session of In the Garden on Facebook Live will be on Tuesday, June 21st. The topic is going to be youth garden. We hope you will mark your calendar and join us. If you have a question you would like to submit for discussion, the deadline for inclusion in the next session of In the Garden is Tuesday, June 14th at 6 p.m. And as I mentioned before, you can send them via email or by phone call or by reaching out to the extension website. Please include the information I suggested before, your email or phone number, so that we can follow up with you and give you the very best answer we can while on air. If we run out of time on our show, we respond by email. I'd like to let you know that the plant sale, the Montgomery County Master Gardeners are working with Horticultural Club at Montgomery College to support a plant sale on the first and third Thursdays of June and July, I believe. And there is a Master Gardener of Montgomery County workshop. There are 2 one-day workshops coming up on mushrooms. They'll be held on June 23rd and 25th. Again, these are one-day sessions, and it's repeated twice on the 23rd and the 25th. But the workshop will be held at the Extension office in Durwood. If you're interested in signing up, please visit the Extension website for more information. At this time, I'd like to thank Steve and Christina for being our experts today. Thank you so much for your great responses and all your wealth of knowledge and information that you shared. And also our researchers who are working behind the scenes to put the questions together and the photos and some of the work in putting the program together. And that is Howard, Nohar, Sheila, Christina, Mary, and Steve, because I know he helps a lot too. So thanks, Steve. Thank you all for joining us. Follow us on social media, and we'll see you next time. Until then, happy gardening.